everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, today we've got a special Spotlight podcast I've been begging for months.
Well, we've covered Voltron in our Studio Mir episode like a year ago, and its series finale. There's still one more thing we need to cover about this amazing show.
Now, while this show got bashing in its final season, and you can decide whether it was deserving of it or not, we think it wasn't. And we still believe it's one of the greatest reboots of all time. And now, today, we're going to discuss how Voltron changed animation forever in our three-part coverage.
Yes.
First up, reboots, storylines, and how it tackled universal laws in a way that no animated series has done before.
Yes. So,
okay.
Yes, because, like I said, when we mentioned this in a previous podcast when we covered it, that we weren't really that familiar with Voltron. I know Mama was because of the 80s show.
I was looking at you like, we weren't?
Yes.
But it had been a while since I seen it, correct?
Yeah, I thought originally Voltron was like a toy line they made into a show, not the other way around.
Right.
And then I remember Voltron Force, and then I saw this on Netflix when it was first on. I was like, oh, okay, something new.
And I think what makes this really interesting is that Voltron, the franchise, in whatever incarnation you want to talk about it prior to Legendary Defender, was one of the most unlikely candidates around to have a reboot. You never would have thought this show would have received a reboot. But DreamWorks made an excellent decision and an excellent choice, and were most excellent in the way they decided to incorporate parts of every version and amalgamate it with some new, interesting additions into what's become Voltron Legendary Defender.
Right. It also helps that they have Studio Mir doing the animation.
Absolutely.
And you know them for doing The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. And you know, both of those animations were spectacular each time. So they went really all out when they got to do lots of different environments that just on Earth. They got to go to these different planets and environments and stuff, and really got to change stuff around a lot.
So now with the success, guys, of this reboot, we had and still have reboots coming out the wazoo from every place in the world. You've got reboots from the 80s, 70s shows, 80s shows, 90s, 2000s, and in some cases like Monster High, a franchise that wasn't even done rebooting a series that didn't need rebooting.
Right.
So reboots went crazy after the success of Voltron. I don't believe anyone but DreamWorks and Studio Mir and Montgomery, DeSantos, and these different people who took a chance on this knew that there would be an audience for this reboot. But I don't believe that most people believed it would be successful. I don't believe most people thought it would be, I hate to put it this way, worth watching, because you probably thought it was going to be a lot like the original. I know when I first heard about it coming, I didn't think they were going to do this exceptional job with it that they did. But after watching that premiere episode for an hour, I was hooked. That was it. You know, you couldn't get me off of Voltron.
Right.
So Voltron, in this instance, they were the exact reason all these reboots are around now.
Right.
I mean, you've got reboots upon reboots upon reboots in every genre and section of entertainment.
Right.
Everybody's redoing.
Yes, because before then, every once in a while you got a reboot. Only if you think it's time to do another version, or you know, this version didn't really do with all things right. We'll make it better this time and change stuff around. It was sort of like every once in a while, like, oh wow, we haven't seen that in a while. Now it's like every time we turn around, it's an announcement for something from some time being rebooted.
The last two successful ones, in our opinion, and you may think there are other animated stories that have done it better, please let us know in the comments below, was Thundercats 2011, which was an amazing reboot that didn't get a chance to finish what they started, and also Full Metal Alchemist with Brotherhood in 2010, rebooting from 2003, taking that story, sticking to the true manga, as you stated to me several times, and just making it so full of action and a great storyline and animation that it was a great idea. But besides those two, you really think back to reboots of shows, And prior to Voltron, you really didn't have any
they were hit or
that
miss.
stuck out. Exactly.
Hit or miss, and that's it. And then Voltron changed everything with its storylines. That it kind of, you thought they were kind of going for something cliche where, oh, they find aliens or something on Earth and they gotta stop the government and yada yada. It almost looked like it's gonna do that, but no, instead it's them going to space and having these adventures. It wasn't like you gotta hide it from the government like it looks like it was going to with Shiro being taken by the garrison. You think he's going to be taken away, and then they would have to use the line or hide it or something. They didn't do all that.
Right.
Instead, they went through a whole thing where there were like all rookies or inexperienced or ones that were least likely to exceed by other people in their eyes, and then they're all chosen to become defenders of the universe and prove that they were, like, take a cue from Transformers, more than meets the eye.
Right. And on top of that, they took these storylines, and in the original series, they were pretty basic. They would touch on something. It'd have a conclusion in 30 minutes or less. But in this series, they really delved into character development, story development, taking it in a place that it had never been before and it'll never go again in any animated series, delving into topics that indirectly addressed a lot of social things that we're experiencing now.
Yes.
And it also took storylines that in the previous incarnations weren't treated as a viable storyline.
It was just something for
wrote
one
dialogue and plot action, everything that really made it interesting. And especially with one of the things with Shiro's storyline. I mean, you remember watching the original, whether you watched it originally or on DVD or so forth, with Sven, and how he was killed off real early, and he had a twin brother. Then it decided it was him, and he was a wild man, and was just kind of ridiculous in terms of how it was handled.
Yeah.
But remember, they were not writing for kids that they thought had a whole lot of intelligence, and they were also dealing with kids during a more innocent time, and a time where you didn't have animation like now that treats the viewers, no matter how young they are, as intelligent people who can understand and
and just,
what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, it's
not just understand, but
you can gather. They can really just gather the information and understand what's going on. That's pretty much a great way of putting it.
So with Shiro's story, this time Sven Shiro, you have this whole arc of what happened, and then he gets developed even more, and then he's allowed to stay in one way or another, one form or another, the entire series. So again, they took storylines that were not so great before and made them viable and interesting the entire series.
Right, because you could see bits and pieces of what they adapted or changed or they referenced, and they kind of like tee-hee at it, but it wasn't insulting, just like, yeah, we get this was kind of weird.
The word I was looking for is comprehending.
Yeah,
and comprehended. Right, that's the word I was looking for. So yeah, the storylines were in the arcs where the episodes, I should say, where the storyline was important, it was done. Then there were those fun ones, like the mall, and
the Monsters and Mana, and the, when they went to the carnival, the Voltron show where they were on tour,
and the game show.
Yes, the feud, so they had room for silliness.
And it was great how it was done. Even then, it was brilliantly done. You laughed, you cried, you hurled, and you enjoyed it, and you were hoping there would be more episodes like that, but you have to remember that this series was a drama.
Yes.
It definitely was a drama, and they put these episodes in for laity, and taking away from a more serious issue, giving you a break from your roller coaster of emotions, only to put you back there after the episode was over.
It was just a levity episode to prepare you, because now it's like a red flag. If they have a really fun, wacky, super goofy episode, that means crap's about to go down the very next episode.
Right, and a lot of animated series, first of all, as you've mentioned a lot, didn't have action, and two, didn't have this type of storyline that was really in-depth and plot driven.
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't.
Right.
Voltron changed that forever.
Yeah.
Now you've got them here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is great and a breath of fresh air. But the first ones to put that back into motion was Voltron Legendary Defender.
Yes, because it was a long-standing belief that action cartoons are no longer marketable. They could just get little kids to watch it and they didn't have to watch them, or they could watch it any time and just relax at all the comedy and just have it just be humor. And older audiences to just get their action from video games or live-action movies. And it looked like DreamWorks was on the path of bringing back action cartoons with this and Troll Hunters, which were two incredibly successful stories. And then it was a little weird turn at the end of Troll Hunters, and then the introduction of She-Ra, which seemed to be like in a rush to take out Voltron and get to this, which was starting to go after another demographic, and it was starting to affect the show. But we're still getting these action cartoons from different sources, and including Netflix, who's relying on their platform.
Absolutely. You got Dragon Prince now too.
Yeah, you got
and
that
Third
show.
Below.
Yeah,
Three Below.
Yeah, Three Below, which is the sequel to Troll Hunters.
Right,
so we are having action cartoons again. It's just you have to stream it now, but you're still getting them.
Right. You have choices, and that's the great thing. Now you have choices. It's not just watch all this. Every network and studio is going to copy the same thing across the board because it was successful for this one. Now you have choices.
Right.
And now you have studios that venture out into more than one type of animated show, which is also great.
Right.
Because again, you are not only respecting the intelligence of the younger viewers, but you're also realizing that one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
And the third thing that really works into it is you have a lot of adults like myself who watch these shows. I have no shame. I love watching animation. I'll be watching animation till I'm 80 or 100. I love it, and there's no embarrassment for me. And there's a lot more adults out there like me.
Exactly.
So, hey, it's great that they are building on these different demographics and making excellent work like Voltron.
Right. And then you have on top of it where it wasn't really as in-depth until it got to the final season, which we understand put people off for a long period of time, was the introduction of universal laws.
The law of attraction, cosmic laws. That absolutely was wonderful for me to see that they visually tried to show these concepts and to share an underlying meaning of we're all
connected,
one. We're all connected. We're all one.
Yes.
And unity and love. And yeah, for some people, that probably wasn't what they wanted to hear or see this series end on. But that looks like it was the whole idea all along to get you from point A to point Z and understanding this. And I think that was a really big gamble. And I think for most of the fandom, it paid off. I think for most of the fandom, it paid off. Even those who don't want to admit, hey, this was really something that they took this concept, put it into an animated show that's the target audience is under 18, although they know a lot of adults were watching it, and say, hey, I know you're young, but I know you can understand this. And maybe no one's told you about it, or maybe you don't understand this is how we're supposed to be. Hey, let's put this in here.
Because we were very confused when we would see reviews at the time when Voltron first finished. It was about a week or two after it finished, and we saw all of these comments and stuff on Twitter saying nothing made sense. It was lackluster writing, disappointing, and some people who did understand it were confused as we were, and they saying, "What are you talking about?" It wasn't boring. It wasn't lackluster. They did exactly what they've been doing since the beginning. They just launched more into this message at the end because they had done what the Voltron show did of saving people, defeating Zarkon. Now it was time to bring in some big guns with that. It wasn't that they lost track of writing. It's just that they were explaining so much bigger. Plus, they were explaining within the show what it was and the theory, so they weren't making it up. They were specifically telling you this is what it is. And I think for some people, they just wanted to see them do the action or shipping.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you watch a show for reasons you want. But here are the 3 quick points I want to make before we end part 1 of this podcast. And that's 1, them talking about realities and trying to not destroy the first ribbon. And that was just really deep. that they went there.
Right. It was way further than any other sci-fi show had done.
And then what I really liked about that part was that Lance was understanding, and Lance was the first one to say, you know, she's going to destroy the fabric of time. And people always would say, well, Lance, you know, or they make jokes that Lance was a dumb one. Lance was not dumb by any means, shape, or form.
Right, they tease,
Lance
but
isn't
that's
even my
it.
favorite character, but Lance was a great character, and he definitely was not dumb.
Yeah.
And he would prove it time and time again when he would make statements showing he understood things that, from what people were saying, he should not have been able to comprehend, but he did.
Right.
Number two, when they took two different points of this law. One was with Shiro, when Allura put his consciousness into the clone body. And that was another part of transmuting energy from one thing to another that would continue and go on. Mm-hmm. He didn't die or stay in the lion. She took that consciousness out and put it into the clone. And that was referring to energy never ending, never beginning, never ending, being constant. Energy, and she took that energy, put it in here, and he went on. And then the third part was with Allura and Hagar, even though she didn't realize to the end what she'd done, making the sacrifice of giving themselves to save all of reality. Mm-hmm. And still in that ending, you know that there was something meant to be done later. With a sequel or some other series.
Looks like they're about to do a spin-off.
That they are not gone. That their energy is continuing, just like with the Paladins.
Yeah.
They were in her consciousness still being.
Right.
And now they went to someplace else still being.
Right.
It was just, you know,
it was
whole,
like,
it
wow.
was a 360 turn from beginning to end.
Yeah.
It began with Shiro and them saving him from the Garrison experiment and so forth, and it culminated and ended with Allura and Hagar sacrificing. Because Shiro sacrificed, if you think about it, when they were doing all these things to him, and no matter what happened, he persevered, he survived, he overcame, and he was the embodiment of that through this entire series. And at the end, that baton got passed on to Allura and the unlikely Hagar in their ultimate sacrifice.
Right.
So I think they did a beautiful, wonderful job.
Yes, and we have seen a person online explain when people were saying they didn't understand why did they take out Allura, and they thought they were just doing it to just trigger fans, which doesn't make sense. And he said, just watch the episode again and listen to why they did it. Yeah, it's bittersweet, but it makes sense for the way they're writing it. It makes logical sense.
And that's what we had to do. Because at first we were like, Allura, why'd you take her out? Oh, that was so wrong. And then we watched the entire series again from beginning to end. And as you said, we understood the second time and realized why it was written this way. And we're not okay with it before you think we're saying that we love Allura as a character. But it was bittersweet. And we understood why. And we think that hope at the end with the lions going into space, and Lance's
marks growing.
I said Allura marked her man. Right. Allura marked her man marks glowing. And that spark of light that's up there is letting you know all is not lost, all is not over, everything goes on.
Right. Right. And there was peace, and like I said, in some way or form, she's still there. So, yeah.
So that ends part 1 of our How Voltron Changed Animation Forever. Join us for part 2 when we discuss characters and representation, how they change animation forever with this show as well.
Yes. Thank you for watching. I'm Oscar Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a toontastic day.
Peace.
And reporters sitting flashing lights, trying to walk around, man, who the hell are you? What you want to do? Well, man, it's on you. Man, it's on you. Met her in my dreams. She was my queen. A castle in the mountaintops, rivers and streams. Plucking sunlight from the sky in my pocket. Give it to you later on in the form of a locket.